Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. Pharah is an incredibly good pick right now. You didn't need to watch this video to know that, but I thought it was a good time to sit down with top 500 Pharah player Valkia to get into the nitty gritty of why, where he's finding success on this hero, any tips he would give to anybody that wants to play more of her, and ultimately, how good is she right now? You can check out all of Valkia's stuff in the description below, but let's get started. So we'll start with introductions as per usual. What current SR are you at, the top 500, that kind of stuff, and also, why should people be playing Pharah this season?
Hello, so my name is Valkia. My current SR is 4250, which is just inside top 500. And you should be playing Pharah this season purely because of the introduction of Brigitte. She basically makes some other heroes not playable anymore, which makes it much better for Pharah players.
So I guess one of the main questions is, for you personally, with Brigitte added, with Hanzo, with the change in meta of Season 10, how has that changed for you? What SR were you roughly at last season? Have you gone up a lot? Have you won a lot more games? Just generally, as a Pharah player, is life better for you this season?
Yeah, life is like 100 times better for me this season purely because Dive is kind of gone. So Dive, the reason that it was much harder last season is because more D.Va was being played, and probably the season before that as well. So D.Va is the biggest Pharah counter, but Dive wasn't really the best kind of composition to play versus. You can do it, but the team is always spaced out, and then again, if you get dived by the D.Va, it's always a lot harder to play. So my SR last season, it was around 4,100, 4,200, but then I could have like a heavy drop down to like 3.9, 3.8, and then I go back up again. So it was kind of a little bit more inconsistent last season than it is this season. So Pharah was actually pretty strong in dive. There was no doubt about that. It wasn't Genji Tracer, but it was still very strong, and you could still kind of do damage. But in terms of appreciation, Pharah is much more appreciated this season, purely because you can literally do more. Like half your rockets aren't being eaten by divas, and you can start kind of putting your full potential as a Pharah player into your team composition, rather than half your rockets, like say, being eaten and like kind of you being less effective.
Yeah, let's go more specific onto that then. Why is it so much better? You've sort of highlighted that Pharah isn't good in dive because D.Va, but also because everybody plays spaced out. Why is it this season, with Brigitte especially, why is Pharah a lot better? Just for those that maybe aren't caught up and maybe don't understand from your perspective, why a hero that fights long range could beat up a hero that's very meta that only really fights close range.
Sure, so the introduction of Brigitte basically was to help counter the whole dive comp. So dive comp was like Tracers and Genjis and D.Va, and even like if she's versus a McCree or even a soldier, it makes it very difficult for them. So because she was introduced, you saw a lot less heroes played which were very powerful versus Pharah. So because there's less heroes being played versus Pharah, which were really big counters, it means that Pharah can now do more. So she has basically, in a way, kind of buffed Pharah, indirect buffed Pharah, purely because she's like more of a main pick now. And so because when she's picked, you don't get the divas, because D.Va can get taken out of mech too easily. Tracers just get melted down by Brigitte as well, and the same with Genjis. And so the kind of it's like people aren't really sure what to play, and then they'll try and play Widowmaker, but Pharah and Widowmaker are counters to each other. If you get close enough with Pharah, you can dive Widowmaker and she can't really do anything about it. So you just have to work with your environment to get close enough. But that's kind of why it's stronger for Pharah this season. It's why some of the heroes from last season aren't played as much anymore, purely because she just stops them being played. So yeah, that's pretty much the explanation to why Pharah's more powerful with the heroes that she's playing versus now.
Yeah, it's not even just Brigitte, right? There's a list of other heroes that Pharah is really good against.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Like in terms of like what Pharah can take out now. I mean, what's been played now in terms of tanks, instead of Winston and D.Va, it's now Zarya and Reinhardt, which is much better because the teams normally play behind a Reinhardt shield. So as soon as that breaks down, the teams are more collective. There's more splash damage, which ultimately means you're going to get your rocket barrage in a much quicker manner. And the thing is, what you have to do is try not to charge the Zarya. You learn that as you go along, but even if you do charge the Zarya a little bit, if half the team are dead, then it doesn't really matter. You'll just kind of melt her down anyway. But yeah, so playing behind the Ryan shields, every rocket counts now as well. The problem before was that because not every rocket was able to hit because it was eaten or destroyed. now every rocket you shoot is something which is going to hit and do damage, which is something which is really nice and hasn't happened for quite a few seasons. Again, this is back to the whole D.Va thing. So it's just more the way that the teams are kind of collected together, and that like they're not spaced out like Dive was. In Dive, they were kind of like on the left, on the right, behind you. The Trace was playing on her own, Genji was playing on her own, on his own. Like, it's kind of, you just don't know exactly where they're going to be, but unless you can kind of always keep track of where the enemy team is, and you know as much, not anymore, that there's going to be somebody coming from behind you.
I get you. It's not only that, I suppose like all long-range heroes against those kind of Brigitte comps are going to be really good. How much have you played against triple support, and how much success have you had against it? Because one of the main things that you said to me is that you're on a lot of win streaks at the moment, and you're just having an infinitely better time within Overwatch with sort of win success than you did before. Like, how good is how good is Pharah? Because you wanted to highlight that she's one of the top 5 DPS currently, and that's saying a lot considering Hanzo's in the game too.
Yeah, so in terms of, you know, hero pick and what hero is actually good this season, and looking at overbuff stats, it was Pharah's currently the 3rd picked offensive hero, and of course Hanzo's the top picked defensive hero. Even with his Storm Arrow, it's still, you know, definitely playable. You just got to be a little bit more careful versus Hanzo's now, because the Storm Bow is a little bit stronger and a bit faster. But you know, if you're used to playing versus McCrees and soldiers, when you just need to just get out of the way and use the walls to hide away, then it's actually not that much of a problem, to be fair. Especially if you have a Mercy on you, you can really take them down. I found if the Hanzo has a Mercy and has damage boost, it can be a bit of a problem. But overall, it's not actually been too bad to play versus the long-range heroes.
So Pharah's been one of those heroes that we've highlighted in videos, been like, you know, she's really good against Brigitte, and teams run in triple support because, you know, you can just fire from distance and there's very little that you can do. Another hero that we highlighted in that is Junkrat, and you pointed out to me, rather surprisingly, that you aren't seeing any Junkrat in the top tiers too. Is that a lot to do with Hanzo? I don't imagine it's too much to do with Pharah, but it is worth highlighting that Pharah is really good against Junkrat.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm actually unsure why there's not been that much Junkrat play. So over the past couple of weeks of playing Season 10, I've probably seen like 1 or 2 Junkrats. I've not seen that many, and if I had seen one, it was kind of like, you know, one trick not in voice comms on the other team or something like that. But yeah, I was surprised that there was less Junkrat being played. I think potentially Pharah is a more popular pick than Junkrat is for this, because Junkrat's ground based and weaker to Brigitte, I guess, whereas Pharah can easily get away from her with the hover or with the boost. But after Junkrat uses mines, he's kind of just on the floor walking around like any other hero, and then kind of get bullied by Brigitte. So I think that Pharah is the more popular pick up in the higher tiers, purely because she can get away a bit more from Brigitte. But again, I'm not too sure actually on why Junkrat is a lower pick.
So the pros have been playing Pharah a little bit, and I don't think you like inherently follow the pro scene much, but Pharah's always been one of those heroes that's been picked map dependently, and almost just a little bit. Granted, it's a bit difficult to sort of gauge nowadays because Hanzo is so good, but like, why is it that Pharah does get played by the pros, is really effective, but isn't really as meta as we've seen with Tracer or Genji? Like, what is Pharah's problem? Like, what things should you bear in mind for sort of future reference, I guess?
So a lot of the time it's about how much healing you can get. So a lot of teams, you know, obviously they play close together, it's easier to heal. And a lot of the times you're kind of like on your own, and you don't want to be kind of seen to be just doing something on your own, I guess. And if that fails, then have the finger pointed at you. So I'm not too sure, because she's powerful. You know, like damage per rocket is 120, so it's like a couple of rockets to take out any of the squishy heroes. She's good at burning down shields. You can play a ground based as well. I think it's potentially down to the consistency, because if you miss rockets, like you could have 6 rockets in your chambers or whatever, but if you miss all of them, then you're not doing any damage. Whereas obviously Tracer is a hit scan. You know, with a bigger clip, you can kind of get in and do more. But I think it might be down to the actual understanding of play with Pharah as well. When you put as many hours into Pharah as I've done, like I recognize how to play versus different team compositions. Of course, you know, obviously in the pro scene it's a little bit different. They're top tier players, so I can't really comment on that. But at the level I do play versus some pro players as well. And I think it's just maybe an understanding of what Pharah can do and the way that she can properly be played as well.
Right. What kind of problems do you run into?
So this season, problems that I run into is sometimes you still have the the Lucio Zen combo. So it's not too bad, but it means lack of heals. You've got Widowmakers, which can be a problem depending on the map. I mean, honestly, there's not that much compared to last season that is problematic for this season. A lot of the heroes, like I say, are ground-based, so a lot of the heroes are ground-based, so environmental kills are higher this season. They can't just go, like Genji can dash back and Tracer can recall, so you can knock more people off the map. So honestly, I think the main issue here at the moment is making sure that the whole team is working together and working with you. So when you're doing something that somebody follows up, seems to be more of the issue now than it was before. Whereas like you could get dived and you know there was like quite a few counters. So overall for me, if I had to kind of pinpoint what was my biggest problem this season, it could even potentially be just making sure that everybody on the team is willing to work together, which is kind of a nice thing to say.
Definitely. So there are going to be people that do play Pharah. I think Pharah is a very popular pick, but just hasn't had the 15 minutes of fame that she's wanted ever since like closed beta when she was really, really good. So what kind of tips would you give to people that maybe, you know, around the average sort of areas of SR that want to play more Pharah? What kind of stuff would you want them to bear in mind in more of a universal sense?
So if you're wanting to play Pharah, what I would suggest is to make sure that you know what your role is as Pharah. So like if they have a shield, like making sure that you help your team burn down the shield. Especially I found in this season that there are kind of less DPS players, or at least big DPS. So burning down shields, making sure that you know if you're going to be doing a movement that or going into the enemy team, that you know where the health packs are so you can get out. Or if you have a healer like a Mercy, making sure that you communicate with your Mercy saying, right, I'm going to do this, can you give me some heals for it? And overall just communicating with your team so you can work with your Zarya so you can do the combos. But yeah, it's all about kind of working with your team, so you are kind of more of an element that does work more on your own. So making sure your team are comfortable with what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I still say like it's okay to make mistakes as well. If you have like a plan in mind, like have a plan and know what your weaknesses are as well, like knowing like, oh, okay, there's a Widowmaker, so I shouldn't show myself here. I should make sure I use the environment, get close and kill her there, or making sure that, you know, I use rockets to kind of zone the enemies around the corners and just kind of play clever, really. You've got to play clever, keep yourself alive, and make sure you kind of build your experience and play comfortably.
Of course. I guess finally to finish on, any final things that you want to say about Pharah? Do you really feel that it's going to get better for this hero, and where can people find more of you?
I really hope that it gets better for sure. Maybe I'm biased saying that because I love to play Pharah. But sure, you know, I just hope it continues. Season 10 has been great so far. I've been hovering inside the top 500. So if you want to come watch some of the Pharah plays, you can find me over at twitch.tv/Valkia. And also I've got some nice little guides as well on youtube.com/Valkia.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. Do, as I said, check out all of Valkia's stuff in the description below. Big friend of ours, friend of the channel, so do go say hi on our behalf. If you want us to talk about any other heroes with any other pros or streamers or just generally influencers, do let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.